Right, so Keir Starmer and his refusal to address child poverty, caught out lying and U-turning once again, as he has, but on this, of all things, it's finally caught public perception to the extent it's now causing him some real damage, having earned himself the nickname Sir Kid Starver. I so wish I'd thought of it. It's absolute genius. You know, if you're the Starmery sort, though, watching this, and you haven't watched yesterday's video that I made, where I also brought this up, I'm not going to go over what I said there again, but there's a very good reason why he's earned himself this nickname, because he stood not all that long ago to abolish the two-child benefit cap, the evil policy brought in by the Tories, the idea of George Osborne, because of course it was, austerity born on the backs of unborn children, as this was. The only exemption was in the case of proving rape. And if you follow the low rates of rape convictions in this country and how difficult that is to prove, you kind of get an idea of how few cases likely got such an exemption. The argument for it was, why should the general public pay for feckless people to have large families? The argument against this was that none of the children born are responsible for being born. Therefore, having them living through poverty from day one is just objectively unfair and cruel. Cases of abortions have been driven up by it, where women may not have considered one before. They have done so because of this policy. It has been a leading driver of poverty in this country. It is a background factor that has rumbled on, exacerbating the cost of living crisis we have all been living through. It has stripped money from families. It is inhumane, and that is not my word for it. That was Keir Starmer's word for it just 3 years ago. He called it inhumane, and now he wants to keep it for basically the same reason George Osborne brought it in: fiscal rules. It'll cost £1.3 billion to reverse this policy. We can't afford it. Members of his own cabinet have called this heinous. They've called it keeping children in poverty, and they're right. Starmer is apparently meeting his senior team on Tuesday for a showdown over this, and that should be incredibly entertaining, because Keir Starmer does not like being told what to do. In fact, he regularly refuses to listen to anyone unless your last name happens to end in Blair or Mandelson. I'm still convinced Rachel Reeves is just him in a wig too, since they're in total lockstep with each other and both speak through their sinuses. Besides, if he wasn't so busy ruling stuff out that he promised before, he could have gone back and looked up his 10 original leadership pledges so long ago, so many lies ago. He could have looked at that very first pledge he made there, which was on economic justice, which said he would increase income tax on the top 5% of earners, reverse Tory cuts in corporation tax, and clamp down on tax avoidance, particularly of large corporations. No stepping back from our core principles, he said. Well, his principles, if you don't like them, he's always got others, as he's gone on to prove. Well, he stepped back and kicked a load of kids whilst he did it. Why tax the rich when you can when they can fund you instead? Get Rachel Reeves to invite them over for breakfast, as she's been doing. According to HMRC, a 1p rise on the higher rate of income tax would pay for all of this. Or are you so desperate, Keith, for well-off earners to like you, favour you, that 1 pence on their taxes, 1 pence, is unthinkable? Anyway, it's not just this either, because Starmer also rolled out free school meals for kids. So not only would he keep the misery of these kids in poverty at home, but he'll continue it at school too, hurting their ability to learn, be the best that they can be. All of this is blatant false economy, abject cruelty, and totally unnecessary, and should be everything the Labour Party is against. The comparisons of Sir Kid Starver to Thatcher the milk snatcher were too obvious to be missed. Margaret Thatcher, as some of you will doubtless know, earned this nickname after she ended the free milk programme in schools for all children over 7 in 1971 as Education Secretary in Edward Heath's Tory administration. It caused hell up. To this day, more than 50 years later, even after her death, she's still remembered as Thatcher the milk snatcher. Starmer has arguably surpassed even that, because this nickname will stick, but unlike Thatcher, he's managed to achieve it while still being in opposition. Even if he goes back on this, even if he changes his mind again, the damage is done. Right now, a year out from the general election and with a romping great poll lead, he's been emboldened to start showing his true colours, his continuity Tory plans, his reaching out to Tory donors, his abject interference in selection processes to ensure only his faction get picked to stand for his Labour. Even if he goes back on all of this again, people won't forget this is what he wanted to do. This is who he is. He wanted to keep kids in poverty, just as the Tories had done before him. The misery caused by austerity he wants to keep. And even if he changes his mind once again, given all the lies and the deceit he's become known for, who will believe he won't flip-flop on it once again, once in power? Voting Labour whilst he remains leader is voting for a party led by a guy who wants to keep kids living in a way he himself once called inhumane. And the tactical genius that he is, he's done all of this just days ahead of 3 massive by-elections. People are literally about to go to the polls in Uxbridge, in Selby and in Somerton and Frome, and with it fresh in their minds that a vote for Labour, a vote for that candidate, is a vote for Sir Keir Starmer. Who goes to the polls planning on keeping kids in poverty, keeping them hungry? Who gets off on that enough to still vote Labour right now after this? As I said a moment ago, this is going to dominate the news again on Tuesday as we see how his team choose to handle this and handle him. But the damage is done. Trust, integrity, character, all things Starmer said he stood for, they've been utterly destroyed by this. That term, Sir Keir Starmer, should haunt him from now until his dying day, just as milk snatcher did for Thatcher. He should never be allowed to forget that he made a conscious policy choice to not lift children out of poverty as leader of the party of working class families, so many of whom are affected by this. And who knows, he may still be going into the next election on this, refusing to back down. Supremely arrogant, but he's right and justified in what he's said and done. But remember, even Tony Blair didn't go here. Labour MPs aren't exactly known of late to stand up to him after all, but we'll see how they get on Tuesday. I wonder after this. A lot of them are apparently really, really quite angry about it. Yeah, I know, even as I say all of this, his defenders will still be there. This is only on social media. This is trending on Twitter. Big deal. It's not the real world. Well, that was the response Victoria Derbyshire gave to independent Metro mayoral candidate Jamie Driscoll on Newsnight last night when he brought up this Sir Keir Starmer nickname that he's got now. But there he is, he brought it up and people heard it on a mainstream outlet. Odious Blairite prat John McTernan was there to defend Starmer, of course, along with the BBC, it seems, saying their priority is getting the Tory party out. Well, aren't you still the tactical genius then, aren't you, John? That's your priority, is it? Let's defend Starmer saying he's going to keep kids in poverty because that's a vote winner. That'll get the Tories out. Anyone with half a brain will be thinking at that, but are we or are we not just putting another load of Tories in then? When the policies don't change, you haven't got the Tories out, have you? 4.2 million kids in poverty. That's 1 in 3 kids. And Sir Keir Starmer is saying, vote for me, I'll keep them there. Alternatives, though, Damo. Well, just as it happens, Green Party Deputy Leader Zach Polanski spoke on LBC to Ian Dale on just this subject, saying, what is the point of the Labour Party and what is the point of Keir Starmer when he has U-turned on everything he has ever stood for? And even on starving children, he refuses to take a line. He referred to the Laura Koonsberg interview on Sunday that Starmer had, where all of this came out, as that interview. And well, he might, because it may well be a defining moment in Sir Keir Starmer's political career. The choice facing the country is of no hope versus false hope, Polanski said. So in other words, Starmer thinks offering you no hope will get him elected. Polanski said Starmer is failing as the official opposition by at every opportunity becoming Tory light, abdicating responsibility and being derelict in his duty. You can argue and point to the parents, but the children are never themselves at fault. And when they are being made to suffer, we aren't a great any sort of country. What's British about letting any of our own kids starve? Starmer can shag as many flags as he likes, but this isn't patriotism, it's barbarism. Now, Polanski spelled it out in black and white. Those latter bits, by the way, were me, not him. No cap on kids. Educate the parents. Help them make responsible choices. That's the Green Party way. But don't target the kids once born. That is foul, and it has to end. If neither the Tories or Labour under Sir Keir Starmer will do that, then for God's sake, don't vote for them. Mainstream media outlets might be sneering that this name, Sir Keir Starmer, is trending on Twitter, but Twitter is a platform built on public opinion. It might be a small segment of them, but if it were insignificant, why do so many journalists frequent it? News breaks there in real time, and then it spreads. It has now been trending, this hashtag, Sir Keir Starmer, for over 12 hours straight at time of writing, and it isn't slowing down, which means more and more people, a lot of people, are picking up on it and are taking notice of it. If it was insignificant, reports of Starmer's team being allegedly incoherent with rage over it wouldn't be coming out either. They know how potentially damaging this is. It is shining a massive spotlight not only on Starmer's long-known dishonesty, but his sheer cold-blooded heartlessness now as well. Ending this cap would immediately lift 250,000 kids out of poverty at a stroke. What an achievement for very little work and so easily done. In fact, according to Child Poverty Action Group, the cost would be negated by the economic gains of parents suddenly becoming more economically active, able to spend and bring about the economic growth Starmer wants, he says. So not only is Starmer a cruel idiot, but he's very much an economic idiot as well. He is an evil man for ruling out reversing this. And every Labour MP going on telly defending him is putting their careers before kids in their own constituencies. So Keir Starmer is a name that will stick, and he deserves it. Ted Heath once said the Labour Party is a moral crusade or it is nothing. So Keir Starmer's Labour is indeed nothing. Thanks for watching. I hope you found the video useful. Please do like, share and subscribe to the channel if you did. New content published daily. Meanwhile, here's a link to yesterday's video where Starmer talked of economic growth and wealth creation as his priorities. Clearly feeding kids doesn't form part of his thinking though. And I'll catch you hopefully on the next bit. Cheers folks.